The first electrified railway to connect Seattle with Everett ran for almost 30 years, from 1910 to 1939, and remnants of it can still be found. Hi, I'm Bob Sversel. We're going to try to bike the route used by the Seattle-Everett Interurban Railway while also checking out some interesting sights along the way. Enjoy the ride! The Shirley Hotel used to be here and served as the Seattle Depot before the Interurban Railway to Everett was completed in 1910. The depot was moved to 6th and Olive in 1919 and eventually to 8th and Stewart, where it was later reused for a Greyhound bus terminal. The western corner of 5th Avenue and Pine Street used to house a triangular building that was the Seattle Interurban Station. The first few blocks of this route are a little awkward with needing to ride on the sidewalk, but once we get onto Westlake Avenue, it will feel more comfortable. The current South Lake Union streetcar tracks resemble the ones the Interurban once used while operating through here. For this video, I tried my best through my research to determine which stations existed, where they may have been located, and how to access the sites legally if at all possible. I used historical maps, photos, descriptions, and more, but I will fully admit that this is not going to be 100% accurate. In the future, I hope to improve on this version of the ride, and I welcome you to share your thoughts, corrections, and interesting facts in the comments. On our way to the Fremont Bridge, we'll stop by a historic transit shelter at the corner of Westlake and Dexter. This shelter was built sometime around 1930, served both Seattle Municipal Railway streetcars and the Interurban, was renovated in 2015 by the city, and is still in use by King County Metro buses. The popular Waiting for the Interurban sculpture was created by Richard Beyer in 1978. Unfortunately for these folks, the east-west orientation of the sculpture means that they would never actually catch the north-south running Interurban, as demonstrated by this King County Metro bus following the old Interurban route. In the Fremont neighborhood, we'll pick up the signed Interurban North bike route, which mostly follows the path of the former Interurban Railway. The Seattle-Everett Interurban Railway ran hourly each day and was operated by the Seattle-Everett Traction Company, which became the Pacific Northwest Traction Company in 1912 and eventually the North Coast Transportation Company in 1930. Greenwood Station was at the north end of the city of Seattle and the only other official interurban stop in the city. Folks would use the city's streetcar system to get to and from this station and then transfer. The former right-of-way of the Interurban Railway has been largely preserved as an alleyway through the Greenwood neighborhood. To follow it, we'll be riding on dirt, gravel, and grass. Cool. Groveland Station sat next to Evergreen Washelli Cemetery, which originates from 1885. When the interurban station was constructed, it had easy access to the cemetery through a break in the fence that has been kept through modern times. The Bitter Lake Station was conveniently located next to the Playland Amusement Park, which opened in 1931 and drew crowds from north and south on the interurban. The Foy Station was a popular streetcar transfer point to get to the Seattle Golf Club, which had relocated to the Highlands neighborhood in 1908. The bridge that used to carry the interurban railway over North Trunk Road here was named Pershing Bridge, and the south abutment of the original bridge was once visible before the bridge was rebuilt in the early 2000s. The Henry Interurban Station was likely named for Horace Chapin Henry, a Civil War veteran who donated the land that was used for the Furland Sanatorium. The station was later renamed Maywood. Before we reach the Ronald Station, about half a block away is another piece of history. This brick road is part of the old North Trunk Road that predated the Pacific Highway. It was paved with these bricks in 1913. The Seattle-Everett Interurban Railway didn't just transport people. It was also used to transport goods, like supplies sent from Seattle to the Furland Sanatorium to treat people suffering from tuberculosis. Before a road connection was built, workers would have to transport the supplies by wheelbarrow from the Richmond Highlands station here to the sanatorium about half a mile away. Back in the early 20th century, Echo Lake was a popular spot for bathing. Though the day I filmed this ride, the water was closed due to high levels of toxic bacteria. Make sure you check before going for a swim. To better follow the path of the interurban railway, we'll take a detour through Ballinger Park. Lake Ballinger gets its name from Richard Achilles Ballinger, who served as a mayor of Seattle, the vice president of the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Exposition, and a United States Secretary of the Interior. Esperance was named by Charles Talmadge Conover, a man who worked in newspapers, went into real estate, purchased land here for his sister, and named the interurban station after his birthplace in Esperance, New York. He is also known for giving Washington its nickname of the Evergreen State. Seattle Heights was founded as a town in 1910 with hopes that it would become a major city, but it ended up becoming parts of nearby Edmonds and Lynnwood. Halls Lake was the former northern terminus of the Interurban Railway until 1910, when the extension to Everett was completed. Cedar Valley gets its name from the lush cedar forest that used to be here, and it was known for having a grange or a country farmhouse built in 1909, which was used for community events and still exists off of 52nd Avenue West. There was no historic station on the Interurban here at the Lynnwood City Center Link Light Rail Station, but it's interesting to stop and acknowledge that it's part of what will be a new electric railway connecting Seattle with Everett once the future extension is built. Now, we're taking a detour off the historic route of the Interurban Railway, but I promise you, it's gonna be worth it. About a third of a mile from the Interurban Trail is Lynnwood Heritage Park, which has something special. On display in a special barn is trolley car number 55, which operated on the Seattle-Everett Interurban Railway for all 29 years that the railway was in service. After the railway went out of business, trolley car number 55 was converted into a diner, used for a museum ticket booth, neglected in storage, purchased by the city of Lynnwood, restored using state grants and city funding, and eventually put on display here at Heritage Park in 2003. Getting back to the route, the Alderwood Manor station was right across the tracks from a 30-acre demonstration farm built by the Puget Mill Company to attract buyers to the area. The demonstration farm had poultry houses, hatchery, incubator facility, granary, vegetable gardens, orchards, community hall, and more, all to demonstrate what a small farm could look like. The land here was once owned by the Puget Mill Company, who cut the trees down for the lumber, then sold the land to potential buyers. They incorporated the word manor into a lot of the planned communities, so that's why the stations around here were known as Alderwood Manor, Inter Manor, Manor Dale, and Manor Lake, which is now Martha Lake. Summit lived up to its name, being the station at the highest point on the railway between Seattle and Everett. M&R Crossing Station was named because it crossed the railroad tracks of the Merrill and Ring Lumber Company at that point. The station was also known as Emander, which you get from saying M and R as one word, much like Endoline in Fauntleroy, West Seattle. Silver Lake was a very popular destination for folks from Everett and Seattle, and the station had a short connection to the lake. The Beverly Park station has a dark past. On October 30th, 1916, it was the site of a vicious beating of 41 members of the Industrial Workers of the World, also known as Wobblies, by 200 armed deputies from Everett. This happened a week before the notorious Everett Massacre on November 5th, 1916, the bloodiest labor confrontation in Pacific Northwest history. The Lowell neighborhood is a former town founded in 1863 that got its name from settlers Eugene D. Smith and Margaret Getchell Smith, who named it after Eugene's hometown of Lowell, Massachusetts. A segment of the Everett city boundary used to run parallel to Colby Avenue, about a block east of here. Our ride ends as we pull into the parking lot outside the old Everett Depot. The north end of the Interurban Railway was outside the Everett Depot, built in 1911. The building was originally only 2 stories tall, and you can still see the old bay window used by train dispatchers. The Seattle-Everett Interurban Railway did its first full run from Everett to Seattle at 10 o'clock in the morning on April 30th, 1910, and it did its last run at 11 o'clock p.m. on February 20th, 1939. For the final run of the Interurban, a crowd of 2,000 people gathered to see the final train off. Robert Meredith, conductor for the very first run of the Interurban from Everett, was brought back to be the dispatcher for the final run. Someday, an electric railway will again connect Everett with Seattle when the Link light rail system gets an expansion, but until then, let's remember the first one. Thank you for joining me on this bike ride along the historic Seattle to Everett Interurban Railway. If you want to do this ride on your own, I put a link to the route in the video description. If you want to see more of my content, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.